could ask one final question, which is, as time passes, with UNRWA inspectors in Iraq and matters, things aren't found. Now, there is an argument that they weren't found because the Iraqis were very good at concealing them.
Yeah.
But it must have occurred to somebody at some time that maybe they weren't being found because they weren't there.
Yeah.
Was that an issue for you, and did you raise it as a problem for somebody concerned with strategic communications?
That was an issue, without any doubt whatsoever. It was a big issue, and again, I'm just looking for a date, because there was a day when John Scarlett actually stated directly, how big a problem is it if all this? I mean, obviously the military were there and they're doing what they had to do on the fighting front, as it were, but also they were looking for weapons of mass destruction. And I can remember the reason why, when people say, "Oh, well, you always knew they weren't there," and one of the sort of glib lines that's run against us. I can remember being at one of the military briefings for the Prime Minister, where Admiral Boyce and his team were explaining the preparations for our forces as to what would happen if and when chemical and biological weapons were used against them, the equipment that they had. And I can remember actually feeling absolutely chilled by the nature of the discussion. So our belief that when the forces went in, they would find the chemical weapons, the biological weapons, all the stuff that had been set out in the September dossier, it was real, it was profound. So, knowing as we did that this was a hugely controversial decision, that large sections of the British public had been totally opposed, that huge sections of the Parliamentary Labour Party had been opposed, to be told that it's perfectly possible that actually you might now be facing a situation, as if you haven't got enough problems on the Prime Minister's plate, a situation where you're going to have to accept that there are no WMD there. That was a very, very big issue and a very difficult situation.
Did this only become apparent after the fighting? I mean, we heard General Fry tell us of his surprise that he wasn't finding anything. I mean, I'm interested in whether or not also the possibility at least occurred to you even before the fighting.
I was. I mean, again, I can only speak for myself. April 28, John Scarlett warned there may be no find of WMD. I was never in doubt, based upon what I saw, what I heard, and the discussions that I was involved in, and so it was a considerable. Obviously, as the invasion took place, and that was the focus, and then there was I think as other witnesses far better qualified than I have said to you, that perhaps the outcome came more quickly than had been anticipated or planned for, but certainly I fully expected and envisaged, and I think the Prime Minister did, that within reasonably short time frame, the military and the intelligence would be coming on saying, well, here's this and here's that and here's the other, and apart from a couple of mobile labs, there wasn't much to report.
And those mobile labs didn't last very long.
Yeah. So that was, in answer to your question, was it an issue? Yes. And was it? Had we thought about it, to the extent that people had been suggesting it, and as it were, those who were very, very strongly opposed. But as I said to you this morning, when for example the Prime Minister was having discussions with Jacques Chirac, who was fundamentally opposed to the decision that was finally taken, there was never any doubt. There never appeared to be any doubt in his mind that yes, there were weapons of mass destruction there. Well, yes, he did.
I think Vladimir Putin did suggest it.
He did it in a very dramatic press conference. Yeah, he did.
Thank you.
Roland, follow up. Just one point. If I can come back to the February briefing paper, Sir Lawrence asked you to what extent the JIC were aware of that, and in your supplementary memorandum of the 24th of June 2003 to the Foreign Affairs Committee, referring to that paper, you wrote that, I quote, John Scarlett attended the 4 meetings at which the issue of Iraq's infrastructure of concealment was one of several items discussed. He was not consulted on the paper, and nor did he see it in final form. He was aware of the fact that SIS had authorised the use of the intelligence material in the public domain, end of quotation. Isn't it a bit surprising that the JIC chairman, who had led or co-led with you the work on the previous dossier, was not consulted on a new paper that was also using intelligence material, and that it wasn't even copied to him in draft?
Was it not even copied to him in draft?
Well, according to your evidence to the Foreign Affairs Committee, I don't know, actually. Perhaps was it copied to him in draft? He didn't see it in final form. He was not consulted on the paper. Perhaps I'm wrong in inferring from that he didn't see it in draft. Seeing it in draft means you're consulted, I would have thought.
Yeah, no, well, it's just at the time, I mean, the systems that we put in place subsequently, as I say, nothing like that would have happened without going through not just John Scarlett, but all of the other intelligence agency leaders. As to whether he did at that time, as I said in my evidence, he was at the meetings. He was aware that it was being done. I just don't know whether those who were putting it together, it was with SIS at the time, would have sent it to him. They certainly should have done.
Right, they should have done. Thank you.
And I think that is the I think that is a lesson that was learnt very, very quickly from that, and it was a very that was a really difficult episode.
So they should have sent it to him, and he, knowing it was happening, should presumably have asked to see it to make sure he'd vetted it before it went out in public.
Yeah, but it may well be, because I can't remember exactly who, apart from John Scarlett and this other person from SIS, was at that meeting, but there may well have been other members of John's team there who were aware. I just don't know.
I mean, the difficulty is that even John Scarlett presumably would not have picked up a plagiarised.
Nor did we.
Section.
No, and that's, you see, and when subsequently when this that is the point. So he probably would have been, I suspect, would have been quite content with it, and maybe there was somebody from the GIC team that was there who was content with it. Certainly SIS were perfectly happy for it to be used in the way that it was. It's the controversy that came later that, if you like, contaminated the whole thing.
Yes, I'm just surprised that obviously Foreign Affairs Committee asked you to go back, check, then you wrote them a supplementary memorandum, so you must have checked at this point, and you must have at that point clearly established that he hadn't actually been in the loop on this.
Well, he'd been in the loop to the extent that he'd been at all the meetings.
He'd known it was happening.
Yeah, I know.
But
I don't know.
Not being consulted on the paper. But as you say, it should have happened.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just for the record, use the term John's team, I think, referring to SIS. He wasn't, of course, at the time he was still JIC chair.
No, I was talking about JIC.
Right.
The assessments team, yeah.